What strikes me about this is that how simple beginning is. I mean, think about it. A couple of families wanted something for their children in English, and here's a couple who just stepped up. English was not their first language. You know, sometimes we hide behind the whole language thing, like, oh, I can't do that. I don't speak the language. English wasn't the first language. They just stepped up and said, we're here, God. Please use us. And they prayed about it, and God moved and led and brought people to them. And so because they were faithful, and then along came Angela. Angela had been in the States for some time. She and her husband were planning on being here today, but guess what they're doing today? They're starting a brand new church. And they're quite actively involved in that. And so here's another couple. English is not their first language, and it was Angela and David who stepped in and were part-time ministers and then went full-time. And Angela asked me to come and preach at Grace Church. I had been in Taiwan for about 2 years and was working in a church in Banqiao. The reason that she asked me is because my son and daughter-in-law were coming to this church then. They had made friends with the Robinsons, and the Robinsons invited them to come. And so they were looking for people to preach on Sunday. And my son, being my son, he said, "Why don't you call my dad? He's not doing anything." So I came and preached one Sunday, and Angela said, "Oh, you're the one. You're supposed to be the pastor." I go, No. I don't think so. Because my plan was to be involved in the Chinese ministry. I do speak Chinese. I was working in a Chinese church in Banqiao, and I was preaching for them every now and then. And it's not easy, but I do. And I know how hard it is. I had a missionary colleague down in Kaohsiung who was at a Chinese church, and he didn't speak a word of Chinese. And so now you're asking me to come and speak and be a pastor at an English-speaking church. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So anyway, Angela, being the persuasive one that she was, says, well, why don't you come and meet with one of the small groups? And we met at Paul and Manwa's house with, several of those people you saw meeting in the small groups. And had a good discussion, but I was not convinced until Paul said something, which I'll never forget. He said, "You know what, Pastor Homer," and I wasn't Pastor Homer then, but you know what, Dave? He says, "You're just like we are." And I kind of looked at him, I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, we were born in Taiwan, and you were born in Taiwan. We left Taiwan to go get our education, and you left Taiwan to go get your education. And then we came back to Taiwan because it's our home, and now you're back in Taiwan. You're just like we are." And for whatever reason, God just really used that to speak to my heart. It struck me very hard. It's one of those things that I just couldn't get rid of, you know. And so in God's way and in God's humor, He brought me then to this church. I tried very hard, actually, to not be accepted. I gave them a very long and detailed statement of faith, and I was hoping there would be something in my statement of faith that would say, no, we don't want you. Because I come from a very, very strict fundamentalist background, and I was hoping that would just kind of knock me off the list there. But I guess the desire for English was superseded that. So anyway, my first Sunday here was the first Sunday of August in 2006, and we've been here since then, and it's been quite a journey, actually. The things that we've been through together as a church. Just out of curiosity, if you recognized yourself in any of those pictures today, would you please stand up if you saw yourself in any of those pictures? Go ahead, stand up. Okay. Yeah. Well, good. And Mrs. Homer, of course, she's here too, but she's with the kids as usual. Well, good. And now, then, if you were here at the very beginning when they started, please stay standing. All right. So we've got some original. Let's give them a hand, shall we? Yeah. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Now, they're kids. We saw your youngest son he was eating the pizza. He still eats pizza, and then I saw your family. The Vine's little boy sitting down in the front row, and Kirsten and the Long children. So I was looking at these children. I'm going, good night. These kids are going into high school now. I want to say this. You know, folks, this church was started because youth needed the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they needed to see it in their parents. And their parents got together and said, we need to do something for our youth. That has always been a strong emphasis at this church, our young people. I think our children's ministry is one of the best in Taipei. And there's not that many English-speaking churches that have ministry for children, but that's very important. I think it's very important that we also now have a youth ministry for the junior high and the senior high kids in preparation for them as they take off to university. And these are the ones who, they're next, folks. They're next. I think as I look around that Paul and I, we're the elder statesmen in this group, right? Yeah. And I sense very keenly the purpose and intent then that we need to have, the burden that we need to have to make sure we pass on to the next generation what God has done in our life here. And I noticed in 2009, that's the last group photo we've had. I praise God. Not that I don't like group photos. I just have always wanted a church that would fit in a group photo. And I suppose we could do it, but it would be pretty crowded. And that's why we have the city, so that you can get on the city and we can see your photo there. And we don't have to have a group photo that we pass around to everybody. It's your page. So please get your photo on the city so we can see your pretty face that you belong here to our church here. I want to pay special recognition to Charles, who's now working at Christ College. Charles, if you'll stand. Yeah. Charles was very instrumental with the youth in the early years. And I really appreciate that, because he gave a lot of time and effort to teaching the young people and grounding them. And now he's still working with youth at the Christ College there. So we just, honestly, we have so much that we should be very grateful for. And I believe, since we've never done this before, it's very important for us to have a sense of our history, because it doesn't stop 11 years ago. It actually goes back a long time ago, clear back to the New Testament, when Jesus Christ came to this earth. We are a part of divine history. We're a part of the divine plan of God. We're just a part of the whole scenario that God is creating, and He's leading us in a direction. He's leading us to His purpose and to His end. So while I appreciate what we've seen here and how God is blessed, we have much that needs to be done, and we have not much that we can do. I'm not going to take that time to go into some of those things now, but I really do want to say that, church, we need to be looking outward. We need to be looking beyond here. It's great when we fill it up and it's too many people for all our chairs. We have plans to put in a coffee corner out here so that if you don't get to sit in here, you can at least have a cup of custom-made coffee, right? And so we're working on getting that done. And hopefully, then we're looking to start a Saturday evening service, primarily youth-oriented. I think we have a critical mass for our youth to start having a young people's meeting and start to fill this up on Saturday evening. And the idea is that people who come on Saturday evening, then they can also help on Sunday mornings, because these people who work in our classes and the ones who are preparing the meal for us to enjoy today, they don't get the sermon unless they plug into YouTube, and thank the Lord for YouTube. Thank these guys back in the little room there for putting it together for us. Thank Scott for keeping our sound together, and Chad for keeping our videos together, and Solomon and Daniel for keeping recordings and getting them up on the YouTube. Just a whole lot of stuff that goes in the background here that we don't see. And I also want to particularly mention our relationship with the Pearl Church. I really do appreciate that you guys came out at 9 o'clock today, since your church doesn't start until 5 p.m. So I know it was a major effort on your part, but I'm very, very grateful for it. And Pastor Jeff Sue was here. I guess he stepped out. He's checking out the kitchen. I know what he's doing. But Jeff has just come on as the pastor there at the Pearl Church, and we have a very close relationship with them. I go down there most every Sunday night. I try and go down and be a part of the church, and I encourage you to show up on Sunday night, 5 o'clock. They're right at the corner of Roosevelt Road and Shida Road in a nice big building there, very easy to get to, very young, hip church, and so ideally located for their ministry there. And to me, I consider it a real privilege and an honor that Grace can be a part of it, that Grace can help them and encourage them, and just to give some, I don't want to say oversight, because I don't really give oversight, but to give some advice now and then. And so I really do appreciate the Pearl Church and the fact that we have an opportunity to work together with them. So I say that because I talk often enough about the Pearl Church, but you just have nothing to and there they are, part of them. And so, get to know them and appreciate them. Here's what I do want to preach this morning, and